Tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome back to this council meeting, 28th of September 2022. We're just moving down through the agenda, and before I go to item 3, we've got Michael Laws on Zoom. Welcome, Michael. And we've also got Sarah Munro on Zoom as well. Nick Donnelly has just got another commitment that he needs to deal with, and he will be joining us later on. So, welcome back, everybody. Public forum, we have no public forum, so move on to item number 4. Apology, have we got any apologies? I think everyone is here, so we're good here. Moving on to item number 4, agenda. I'll move it be confirmed as circulated. Second, Carmen. Any discussion? If not, the motion, all those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Item number 5, just the standard reminder about conflict of interest. Moving on to item number 6, which is of the meeting on the 15th of September 2022. That I'll move that the return correct record. Second, Carmen. Is discussion.
Hello.
Hello, Michael. Yep, we can hear you.
No, I can't. I'm sorry. I've got a council meeting which I have left.
Thank you. Thanks, Don.
Yeah, no, thanks, Michael.
That's second line too.
Okay, so the minutes of the 15th September 2022 council meeting have been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Open actions. If you want to just flip over to those. This is item 7. First one is still yet to be triggered because it relates to the tag report being completed.
Is there any update on that?
Yeah, so there was an email circulated yesterday that you should have got. It was probably circulated, I don't know.
My question is for the public. Is there any public information that we're allowed to tell?
I'll ask Anita.
Yes, so the excuse me, the hydrological report and model has been received by ORC. We're still waiting for one more piece of information from hydrologist, excuse me. And we are in the process of scheduling what we think will be the final tag meeting. So that should be in the next few weeks.
Okay. Any other queries on that item? If not, move on to the next one, which is the policy being developed for walkways on ORC owned flood banks. Policy is in preparation and the timeline is able to be met due to the resolution made by the Finance Committee 1st of June 2022. Anything to add to that, Gavin? In terms of
Mr. Chair,
timeline update?
we're acting on that resolution of the 1st of June, which was to undertake some consultations. So we're just working through that engagement with the proponents of the fiery cycleway.
Oh, so it's in progress.
Yep. Is there a new date?
Gavin is.
No, I don't have a date for that.
The next item.
Does that mean it will stay? And does that mean it just falls off the perch, or does it?
Gavin, so are you able to indicate when a timeline could be confirmed in the future?
I can come back on that, but it's obviously dictated to some degree by the timeline of the group we're engaging with. The important thing here is the resolution the council made in respect of a policy by the 30th of June could not be met because of the additional resolution that required the consultation and the work. So there's sort of 2 resolutions that are in conflict with each other. Yep. And we're acting on the second one.
So have we any indication of what the timeline looks like for the consultation to be completed and then reported back?
No, I don't have that.
Well,
Can you-
how does it get forward to the next? As an action point, get brought forward
We'll come back with a date.
and put it on
For the
the
next council meeting.
Any other queries on actions? No? Okay, moving on to item number 8.1, which is the annual report. 21-22 adoption. This is for the period, the last financial year from 1 July 21 to 30 June 22. And it has been completed and is presented for council for our adoption. We've got Sarah Munro with us on Zoom, and Nick is with us as well. Is there anything either Nick or Sarah would like to cover off in terms of introducing your report, or we take it as read?
I will take it as read. There are some minor adjustments that have happened from the report that was submitted. They just really relate to wordings, and there were a couple of changes that were requested out of the Audit and Risk Committee, just in relation to the forward farewelling some of the councillors. We had the comment this year, and it's just changed to at the end of the triennium. And there was also around the severance pay with PIM. I had acting CE, and that's just been changed to interim, which was requested. Otherwise, it's just a few spelling and typos were adjusted, and a footer, etc.
Excellent, thanks, Sarah. And attached is I saw it somewhere, the draft representation letter. I can't remember where I saw it. Was it Diligent? Was it? Yeah, it's been circulated separately, so we've also cited that. Thank you. Queries, questions? Kevin?
I was just going to happy to move. Were you going to move this?
You can move it.
I'm happy to move all three recommendations.
Excellent. Moved by Kevin, second by Hilary.
Yes, and I was just.
Do you want to speak to that, Kevin?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, at the end?
Yeah, no problem.
Hilary and then Brian.
I was just going to say that the representation letter, we've been having discussions about what of it and how it can be in the future presented in a public fashion rather than its usual way of not being, because some other councils have a way of making as much of it as possible public, which is a good thing, and that it helps people out there understand what our auditors wanted to say about things. And it's just a comment on.
And that info has been passed on to staff, that how other authorities are handling that, just so that that follow-up will happen.
Yes,
Yep.
yes, I think it's going to be looked at as to how we present, how that can be presented as a public document at the end of the draft letter, management letter.
Thanks, Hilary. Brian?
Oh, hang on a minute. I'll just think back to grades.
Look, a big thank you to staff and everybody for the work that's been completed as outlined in this annual report. And I went through it and I read it and I thought, yes. And then I thought, well, actually, how well have we done, in terms of this report from ideally an objective sort of way. So I looked at the performance result, and there's a total of 64 measures. And if I excluded the partially achieved targets and the targets not achieved or the targets not able to be measured, and I just focused on the targets that were fully achieved, what we've achieved is 42 out of 64, 65%. That's what we've done. And I Googled it. I thought, 65%, that turns out that it's on the cusp of a C+, B-. And I'm thinking, have I been a bit tough because I've excluded the partially achieved? But then I sort of reconcile that and say, well, we chose the targets. And I look at council performance and I think, maybe that's how we have performed in terms of a C plus, sort of B minus. We've done a lot of good things, but there's been a certain things that we haven't done as well. Nevertheless, I would like to, also reaffirm the really good progress in certain areas. Like, for example, this report talks about the regulatory space, the fact that we're actually progressing the RPS and the Land and Water Regional Plan, and we're going to make these timelines. That's our focus. We have improved our consenting and our compliance. It seems to me if you're a forestry block or a dairy farm or a wastewater plant, even a rabbit, that the noose is slowly tightening. And the central government's trying to do its best, but in terms of national policy statements, and maybe it's the non-regulatory space that's most exciting. The integrated catchment management we're doing, the target catchment community, the Eco Fund, the Councillor Deep has been involved in jobs from nature. There's a lot going on. So, maybe a C plus B minus is a bit too tough. I'm not sure, but nevertheless, it seems to me the next term will be a challenge. We need to keep moving on there. I think there is light at the end of the tunnel in terms of our objectives, and I just hope that the council carries on that path.
Thank you very much, Brian. I actually don't think it's a bad result either. I would be nervous if we'd achieved 100% of our performance measures.
Yeah.
Because if this had said we'd achieved 100%, I'd be asking whether they were the right performance measures and whether they had the right amount of stretch in them.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that you're ever looking for 100%. I think some of these measures were quite hard to achieve, and I think we heard the auditor telling us that they were really impressed with the way we'd improved these measures, that they weren't too easy for us to achieve, and they were a stretch, and that we were vastly improving the reporting on them. So I'll settle for a B plus. Thank you, Brian.
No, I never said B plus. I said a B minus C plus.
But he just upgraded it, Ron.
Thank you. Michael Laws.
Thank you. Can I take you to page 114 of the report? It will excite some media attention, so I may as well get it out now. And take you to employee remuneration table. So it's section 29, page 114 of the annual report. If you look down the left-hand side of that table, you'll see an extraordinary sum of money called $620,000 to $639,999, and that we had one employee paid that in the year ended 30 June 2022. Where does that come from?
So I can answer that. Just underneath the table, you'll see the chief executive remuneration. So that is actually the remuneration that was paid to Sarah Gardner.
But she's not on
Out in the note.
She's not on $620,000 a year.
So that includes her salary payments as well as the termination, the termination payments that were made to her.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So it includes the total remuneration that was paid to the employee.
Right. Okay. Thank you for explaining that to me.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, Deputy Chair.
Any further speakers? If not, before I go to Kevin, just a couple of things. The intro from myself and Pim talks about, my staff, talks about ramping up. I believe we not only have ramped up, but we've also stepped up. And Brian's analysis of what we haven't done, I'm looking on the other side and saying, what have we done? And at the beginning of this triennium, and I know we're only talking about the last financial year, but at the beginning of this triennium, we talked about stepping up to the plate, being more accountable, responsive, open and honest, transparent, and connected, engaged with our community. And we have stepped up in a lot of those spaces, but we have also taken on projects that take sometimes take years to implement, let alone set up and ensure that they are embraced by the community or our stakeholders or iwi or whatever. So a lot of these projects that we, I suppose, identified during the big rate increase a bit over 12 months ago, the 48% average rate increase, focused on areas like biosecurity. And for the first time for a long time, we were, I think, privately funding appropriately to an appropriate level. But the projects that funding, for example, is targeted projects that take a considerable amount of time to actually deliver outcomes in the community, and also think about our 3 lake priorities in terms of improving water quality. They were also targeted during that step up into that 21-22 financial year. And once again, there are projects that will carry on for many, many years. So I'm not so focused on what hasn't happened over this period of time, but I'm more focused on what we're building towards. So ramping up, but also stepping up, but looking into the future. Yes, we will get the outcomes, but it will take some time. Kevin.
Yeah, look, concur with Councillor Scott's comments, and I will slip it up to a B, in that when you look at some of the metrics that we use, 100% of the Official Information Act's done within a certain time frame. So we'd only have to miss one of those by reason of illness or something, and then we go to a red mark. So some of these metrics are exceptionally tough. We are on a very good plane, and it's very good. You've got to remember, at the start of this triennium, we were very much understaffed, very much under-resourced. We've had COVID, we've had huge ministerial orders, and yet staff have slogged away and got us into a very good position to go from. So on our actual performance, I congratulate. But looking at this report and going back to our audit and risk, where we talk to the auditors, what we need to do is actually really acknowledge our Mr. Donnelly and his full team with Sarah, Jasmine, and that whole team on the work they've done preparing this report, which has been highly commended by the auditors. The auditors will not alter anything. There's nothing bad to report. So going with Councillor Calvert saying that we need to get that in front of the public to show that we are to have these processes and systems really well in place to look after their funds and ensure they're being recorded and measured correctly. So for that team, to the whole team, great work for the year, but especially to the finance team under Nick, Sarah and the likes, exceptionally well done for your audit, and very much appreciated by myself and I'm sure all councillors. Happy to move, sir.
Well said, Kevin.
Yep.
Hilary. No further speakers. Hilary.
Just briefly, I don't think you can necessarily judge anything from the performance measures, which may change from year to year and which we may or may not have got right. But where we should be looking at ourselves is to think, to notice and to take account of when we did things that we, looking back on it, think weren't done as well as they might be, or because we responded to something but we didn't respond as well as we might, that we've acknowledged that and that we've changed and we don't make the same mistake twice. So any time when we've done anything, if we've got measures in place that show us, not measures, but accounting tools in place that account for how we did things, the choices we made, were they good, were they bad, and were they better next time than they were before? Have we grown? Have we grown well? Have we done better than we've done last year? And I think on all those sorts of measures, we really have. And I think not the least of which is the responsibility of our staff, or actually PIM staff. So what I'd like to say is, PIM, thank you, and thank you to the staff that you have led.
Well, I wasn't here for much of this financial year that this report talks about, but thank you very much, Hilary. I'll pass that on to the staff.
Thank you. Any further speakers? If not, I'll put all those recommendations together. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. It's dealt with 138 pages of the agenda, so good work. Moving on to 8.2, which is the Portotanga Statement of Corporate Intent. This report is provided for council to receive Portotanga Statement of Corporate Intent for the 3 years to June 2025. We've got Nick with us. Nick, that report is read. Is there anything that you want to highlight?
No, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. You had it points out you had a workshop with the port on on the draft. Well, not the statement itself, but what they were intending to put in it. And so now this is the formal document coming back to you for your endorsement.
Cool. Happy to take any questions. Are there any questions? No? Happy to move.
Yes, I was.
Thank you, Chairman. So that's 1 and 2 that received the report, and we endorse the statement of corporate intent.
Yes.
Seeing Kevin, want to speak to that, Carmen?
No, I just see there's options there. Obviously, we're going with option 1. Chair, no, on the package.
You're on page.
Oh, sorry. I apologise. I've just gone over.
We're on 148.
Forgive me. I've just no, yes, absolutely. I don't have anything else.
That's good.
Forgive me. Slipped over there.
You want to speak to?
Look, just again, I think this statement of corporate intent just reflects the openness with the port and the efforts the port are making to ensure that they're doing things to the benefit of us as the owner, but also to the whole Otago community. So, like, I think at the end of the day, we've got a very strong organisation that has got a very good governance team and are working hard to make a very good asset. Well, it is a very good asset for the province of Otago. So I congratulate them on putting this statement of corporate intent forward, and I'm sure the new chair is to be elected in at the end of this year. Tim Gibson will carry on that the very good efforts that have been put in. So happy to support the moving of the motions.
Cool. Any further speakers? It's probably just for noting that we review this on an annual basis, even though this is a 3-year statement of corporate intent. So, Gary.
Just to add to the previous comments, I think, and from what we learned in the workshop this morning, or the presentation this morning, again, a very, very positive one, as it has been. Just highlighting too that the last 2 challenging years from the trading perspective of the port, and then alongside the dividend demands that this council has, how lucky we are to have as described as a golden goose, the property element of their balance sheet incredibly strong, and it creates us with some very exciting opportunities going into the future, and highlighting that we must protect that for Otago at all costs. Into the future, we are so lucky to have it. It's a very diversified across New Zealand property portfolio, and it has meant that the poor trading, or the difficult trading that the port has had over the past couple of years has been able to be managed and still provide us with what we need and meet our demands for a greater dividend into the future. So I think the new council coming in and subsequent councils beyond that will be in a very strong position to do well for Otago. So that was all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further speakers? If not, I'll put both those recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Nick. Moving on to 8.3, which is the consent fees policy. Welcome, Richard. This was the policy change that came to the regulatory committee on the 15th of September. So
Option 1.
happy to move option 1. So I'll just check with Richard. You're nothing, take it as read. Yeah, cool. Right. And
Thank you. It's great to get the feedback.
excellent. So Kate has moved, seconded by Carmen. Is there any discussion? If not, I'll put the both recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Moving on to the next one, which is Richard's as well. 8.4, the RMA compliance and enforcement policy. Once again, it's been passed the regulatory committee on 15th September.
One note on that, Andrew, there was that request made at the committee for that specific reference to ORC in that conflict of interest. So we've added that as per the discussion at regulatory committee, and that's now the final version that we're putting up for adoption, for approval by council, sorry.
And that was circulated in here
Yep.
as part of on the council agenda. Yeah, very good. Thank you. Someone like to move?
You're so happy to.
Thank you, Carmen.
Second.
Are there any speakers? If not, I'll put both motions. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you, Richard. And welcome to.
Hey, Carmen, let's go.
This is 8
So do we.
and Pam. Oh, sorry, Alison. Beg pardon. Sorry, apologies, Alison. So 8.5 is to approve minor amendments to the flood protection management bylaw. These are the minor changes that are required to the legend on some of the maps. Thank you for supplying all that information in the agenda. Contained in the schedules of the Flood Protection Management Bylaw 2022, in accordance with the Local Government Act. Approval was sought from the ORC for these minor changes or corrections to be made. There's 3 recommendations there. There's any, we take the report as read. Is there any comment from either Alison or Gavin?
Yeah, there's it's just been raised that there are about 6 corrections required to the maps that aren't related to the bylaw itself, but I can list those if
And which map are we talking about? So we can go to perhaps on the
maps in schedule 2 and 3 that are within the attachment to the bylaw, to the paper.
You wouldn't happen to know what.
Yes, I've got the pages here.
Okay, so
So-
you just tell us the pages and we'll go to that and then you can.
Sure. Okay, so the first page is page 233.
Yep.
And Lake Tuaki Toto is spelled incorrectly on that page. So that's the first one. The next one is over the page on page 234. And this is also an error on page 245. And it's just that the name Barnego is on the wrong side of the river. It's just a layer, GIS layer issue.
Yeah.
Barnego, thank you. The next one's page 236. And we've got Waipori Falls Scenic Reserves, but this should be Mangashua Scenic Reserve. And then the final change is page 236 and 247. It's the removal of the reference to Mayfield Yards next to Mosgiel.
All pretty minor.
Yeah, they are very minor.
Wakatoto is not.
No, it isn't.
Wakatoto, so.
So perhaps we should,
Tau, as tau.
so effectively what you've told us today is incorporated in recommendation 2 anyway, approves the minor changes.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, is that the way you see it?
I do. Yeah, these
Gavin, do you agree or not?
Yes, it's extending the scope of what is incorporated into that recommendation.
Excellent. Someone happy to move the 3 recommendations? Thank you. Thank you, Cameron. So we'll note that. John, please keep on saying that. I think seconded by Kate.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Thank
Yes.
you. It's probably a bit nitpicky, but I just wanted to know was you organised a drop-in, which was lovely in Oamaroon, and there were no attendees. It's just is it just the way it went because you then went to the stakeholders, below it in paragraph 13, and there was quite a lot here, but was it just a timing thing or just one of those things? It's for the next paper.
Thanks, Cameron. Keep us on track this one.
Yeah, no, it's
Are there any other queries been moved and seconded? Any further discussion? If not, I'll put the 3 recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you.
I am so sorry.
Moving on to 8.6. Approve amendments to the Waitaki designation notice of requirements. This report is provided council approval of the amended notice of requirement following public consultation and lodgement of the application for designations with the Waitaki District Council. This is to provide the designations of land of which the Otago Regional Council flood protection works and assets are situated.
I would just-
Take the report as read, and I'm going to Carmen in a second. Anything that you wanted to highlight? Alison,
No,
at all?
thank you.
Gavin, you're good. Carmen, you happy to move the three?
I am.
No, first, and you had a question.
Get my FOCO out of the way. I do apologise as a bit of myself. On that discussion on number 12 paragraph, you've done everything there to make contact, and I see there's a drop in event at Omara and there was no one attended. Is it one of those things, just how it came? I mean, obviously all the information was sent out, and then you've got some stakeholders that in the next paragraph from 13, and you've got quite a lot there that have been considered, but was it just one of those things?
I think the structures that we're dealing with are already subject to the bylaw. So the only people most likely to be interested are landowners who have those structures on their land. And we think that they didn't see it as a major issue because it's just carrying on the same process that it's already restricted under the bylaw. Yeah.
Thank you.
So you can just leave them that one, or you have
Second thing. Thank you, Kate. Any discussion?
The local councillor didn't attend because he had a conflict.
I was going to say, I think I was going to ask you that.
You in or out for this one?
Oh.
Not sure. It's noted. Okay, I'll put those three recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against. Carried. Thank you very much, Alison. Thank you, Gavin. This is one of yours as well, Gavin. This is the 8.7 integrated catchment management update report. It provides an update to council on the progress on decisions made on the 10th of August 2022 meeting of the Strategy Planning Committee regarding the integrated catchment management program and proposed terms of reference for the proposal of the ICM working group. Welcome to Libby. Anna may be on Zoom.
Yes,
She is with us. Welcome, Anna. We'll take the report as read, but I'll check with Anna and Libby whether there's anything you want to say at the front end of the discussion.
No, nothing from me unless Anna's got something, but we can just take it as read.
Yep, I'm great with that.
Excellent. Thanks, Anna. Okay, Hillary and then Kate.
Oh, no, I'm.
Oh, sorry. I thought your hand was up. Sorry. Kate, then Alexa.
Question I have is that in the best of intent, this choice of catchment got slightly skewed in the previous papers where we had initially, or second, had suggested Upper Lakes. And I appreciate that they had expressed some excitement about taking up. Have we had any feedback from them about losing that opportunity?
So Anna has spoken with the people from Waiwanaka. So would you like to expand on that, Anna?
Yes, sorry about that. I just had to move rooms. Yes, I had a great meeting with Waiwanaka, and they were disappointed at not necessarily being the pilot, of course, but quite interested to be kept informed of how we go, looking at the lessons we learn and how we could then implement them when we do get to the Upper Lakes. So, yeah, they understood the reasoning and where we're heading, and somebody had to go first, and they were sorry it wasn't them, but completely understanding.
So subsequent question. Can you just give me, and I'm sorry I didn't do my reading as I should have, when is the next one going to be rolled out? And are we on time for this one? We brought this one forward, didn't we? The timeframes for the next ones?
We haven't set timeframes for more than one catchment action plan at this stage. This is being a pilot. We were going to use it as the basis to work out timing for following ones, subsequent ones, and whether we could go concurrently or sequentially. And again, the timing for this one, it was in the long-term plan as being year 3, which I guess by the time we get it started may well be this year. That'll depend on the working group and then the outcome of that working group and establishing some form of collaboration to undertake the CAP development work.
Yeah. This is going to complement, I think, the land and water plan a lot. And it is the non-regulatory way of getting compliance. And in many ways, it's the higher baseline for getting the end results we want, I think. One way of doing it. The rules are the baseline, and this gets us hopefully a better outcome even and collaboratively. Given that the timeframes, and it's really hard to get these some things going, and I know that we need to have staff really comfortable with the process, but I'm concerned that, and this is a question looking out to land coming out in December 2023, is it unrealistic to think that we could be rolling out more of these integrated catchments at about that time in order to get the best catchment uptake that we could for the land and water plan? So you've got a full suite of engagement.
It's a difficult one to answer. My apologies for that. It's a bit unknown. Developing a catchment action plan, we haven't done one before. The level of detail could take quite some time to get that level of collaboration working properly. I'd like to think yes, that is feasible to start another one before the end of next year, but I wouldn't be able to commit to that without having more information about how the first one goes.
If we want to cover something off, and this is rather than adding it on to the agenda motions today, would you be up for some questions during the chairs and CEO's reports? It might do something at that stage as a recommendation. Thank you.
Are there any other queries? Let's spend Brian. Sorry, Alexa, then Brian.
That's no rush.
Yeah, sorry.
Anna and Libby, thanks for this. I know it's not easy being first off the block and this first one going. I also had a conversation with Waiwanaka. Mandy Bell contacted me, and they were pretty upset. I basically took her through what we had discussed as a council and why we got there. I think she was okay. So I'm really glad. I was actually going to ask you whether you had talked to Waiwanaka, and clearly you have. So that's great. I think really the success of this is going to be about bottom-up communications through you. And I wonder how, if you have a specific plan to make sure that that information comes up as in the most unfiltered way possible and through to us as the governors.
Once again, through the chair, if you'd like me to elaborate on that, the working group that we hope to get underway ASAP will be tasked with working out that level of detail for that bottom-up collaboration. Obviously, I have some ideas, and we have that report that was presented in the last paper on the 10th of August to the Strategy and Planning meeting that had attached to it an investigative piece, if you like, around how that collaboration might look, what kind of platform it could work on, and what kind of process might underpin that. So it is definitely first task to get done. Once we get it underway, we'll be able to see how well it works, what may need to be tweaked. But again, using that working group, which has community members involved in it, plus OCC, plus councillors, and our Mana Whenua partners, should hopefully lay that groundwork appropriately.
It's got to make sure it doesn't stop there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. That's literally the groundwork, and then from that we build.
Thank you.
You, Brian.
Yeah, cool. I'm sorry to hear that Waiwanaka are disappointed, but on the other hand, I'm actually a little bit relieved. What I take out of it is that groups want to do this integrated catchment management as opposed to, oh no, we don't type of thing. So part of me is actually relieved, and it's an opportunity for the captain's area. Just to get my understanding correct, Libby and Gavin, so we're doing this initial stock take within the ORC. Like, one of the key tasks is simply to find out what is currently going on and what the gaps are, yeah? Yeah. And so this initial stock take within the ORC, is that just the projects that we're involved in? Or like, at what point do we, and how are we going to identify all the things that are going on? Or is that all part of that group work? And that's all yet to be formed? Is it?
Yeah, through the chair, that is the plan for the stock take is not just ORC work, it's for all of the community work that's going on, so we can look at where there's gaps. And
okay, so how you actually do that is yet to be determined. It'll be determined by the group. Is that what all this says? I read all the words, but I was just trying to understand it.
Yeah, that's to be determined through the working group. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Kevin, then Gary.
Well, look, I'm really excited about this, and yeah, now what we had a discussion, CE, the chair and myself with Wanaka, and while they were disappointed, they will be dead keen to get into the next stage. So that's exciting. Just under your roles of the ICM working group, really impressed that A is doing the stock take. But I just wonder if when you are actually doing that stock take, is that the group is also looking at the capabilities of the communities, because that's probably is going to unearth where we may need to support them to do various things. I mean, I'm sure you'll do that, but it's sort of not in that wording, but it will be, yeah, if they've got major things to do or assistance needed, it'll be really good for us to be able to jump in there or lead them in that direction. So very good. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you. I think just following up from the question from Kate, though, that obviously her thinking and I think my thinking are possibly a polar apart from where we're actually going to end up, and that thinking that some catchments might have been well advanced prior to land and water plan being notified. If we're only going to have the possibility of maybe a second one underway by land and water plan notification, then we are really looking at an incredibly long-term time frame to get multiple catchments underway. So is this something that needs to urgently be considered in our annual plan for next year, that we are going to need more resources? Because if we have willing groups like Wanaka and others who might actually want to be underway, that council needs to be looking to support that more with more staff and more resource to be able to handle more at once.
Is that it? Sorry, would you like me to?
I think that's a question for you, Anna, or Gavin.
Okay, I might let Gavin add to this. It's a very good point, Councillor Kelleher. And there are a couple of ways of looking at it. Is yes, if we had obviously throw a whole lot of resources at it, and that'd be a decision for the council. We may well fast track this. However, the opportunity of the pilot, we don't want to lose that. I think it would be really useful to allow that to run as far as it can, so we can make the rollout of several others even, or one at a time, however that may pan out, to be built upon the lessons we learned from that pilot. But yeah, I'll leave the resourcing issue question up to Gavin.
Thank you.
Through Mr. Chair, yes, I think it's something that should be examined in the 23-24 annual plan development, now that we've got more detail at this moment in time compared to when you considered it in the long-term plan. And the other thing is, council did receive a couple of proposals in terms of how fast to deliver this in the LTP, and decided to go for the one that was a little bit slower. But of course, that can always be revisited, and probably should be as part of annual plan development.
Yes. That community well.
Yeah. The only other comment I would make is there's some caution about trying to too tightly connect this non-statutory wide process, which is not just water, it's biodiversity and rivers and stuff, with a statutory water related process, and whether this starts to slow that down or interfere with it in any way. The risks around that as well as the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I was just happy to move.
Okay, were there any other speakers? No? Okay. Carmen, you happy to move?
I am, and I'd like to concur with what Councillor Kelleher said, and I thank him for raising that, because I was wondering how it was all going to fit in too. So yes, I am happy to move.
Excellent. Happy to second Kate. Any discussion? If not, Hilary. Sorry, any debate? Sorry.
Just a thought that we do need to find a way of integrating requirements that keep bundling down from Wellington and things, and that are statutory, and like our planning documents and things, and the community, sometimes hopefully community-led or community-based or non-regulatory things. They sort of have to be bundled together, or they don't achieve as useful an outcome to me. So thinking of them as trying to keep them, I can see why it's tidier. Dr. Palmer's suggestion sort of that we don't want to mingle them, but tidiness may be less of an issue than actually integrating, which is part of the word of one of these basic things, integration is going to require a combination of regulatory and other ways and means. And sometimes the most useful outcomes will be achieved through the non-regulatory things. And the regulatory things, to some extent, in my mind, are like laws and rules and things generally. They're only what you go to when it isn't working. You go back there and think, what can we do about this not working? If it's working, you don't go anywhere near any rules and regulations and everything else. So to me, it's not only important that they're done in combination, but it's important to me that they're done with this sort of process to the forefront, and the rules and regulations and plans and things in the backstop phase, but they all need to be part of one in my head.
Thank you. Gretchen.
Yeah, just wanted to say this is great to see this all together. ICM is the way forward for the council, but it's important to recognise as well that it's not waiting until every catchment has an integrated catchment management program ticked off and the resulting plan, because we're actually investing, as others have mentioned already, in staff and the resources and the science to be able to assist communities as we are at the moment. So when we go into a catchment and we do these catchment action plans, there will have been a lot of work going on already in those catchments. As we know, with Catchments, Otago and others, and already independent community groupings that are doing their thing happily at the moment. We're slotting in where we need to. So yeah, we will learn from our initial catchment program, but we're learning as well from a whole range of other work that we're doing, compliance even, and the approach that we're taking there as well, working with communities. So yeah, I probably agree as well with Gavin that we need to have a look at how quickly we're rolling this out and what community expectations are and where we can assist. So Gary, thanks for bringing that up. That is important. We do need to do that. But yeah, I just want to recognise as well, for people whose rates have increased, we have actually got staff out there already that are working in the catchment space. They might not be labelled exactly as catchment advisors at the moment, but there is work happening. So yeah, need to recognise that. Thanks.
Thank you. Kate.
I think I was going to raise this later on the chairs and mates will do, but I just want to note that MPI are currently looking at positions in catchment advisors, and I'm not quite sure that they've got a necessary project and role, and I think they're in a collaboration with them with the resources is exactly why I've been pushing that we may be able to push someone's work forward. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's an increase in rates or our staff. The collaboration with the MPI, the new staff members would seem to be a great opportunity for us to consider that.
Thank you. No further speakers. It's been moved and seconded. I'll put both those recommendations together. Those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you very much, Libby. Thank you, Anna.
Yeah.
Moving on to item 8. This is the regional wellbeing framework progress update and reports. Welcome to James and Anne. I believe we've got Connell Smith from
Connell Smith should be
Connell.
waiting in the lobby, hearing shortly.
Oh, sorry, Connell. Connell Smith. Is it Car Insight?
Portotanga Insights, yes.
Yeah, it's online now.
Awesome. Welcome. Obviously, this is the first time that this particular development of a document has been to the it's in draft form. It's evolving, etc., and it aligns obviously with our service delivery target and their long-term plan. And I imagine that's probably why there's been quite a bit of work going on behind the scenes. So welcome and thank you for bringing the report to us. Thank you. James and Anne, is there anything you want to make any comment on at this point?
I'm-
Take it as read.
I'm happy to take the paper as read and to introduce our consultant, Connell, of course, who should be arriving on our screens in just a moment to answer any questions you might have.
Welcome, Connell. You're happy just to take questions, and the other option is if you would like to make any comment with regards to your work as a consultant providing the report that sits behind this paper that's in front of us.
Kia ora, kia ora koutou. Yeah, I'm happy to take any questions people have got.
Query, Anne.
I think it might be just worthwhile saying that this is OIC's first foray into the broader wellbeing area, and we decided to do a high level start, I guess, to a framework, and that because it's early days, we would expect this to be the start of a long conversation. It's not kind of all going to be done and dusted immediately. Yeah.
And it involved a community advisory group. It's with TAs and Southern District Health Board, or sorry, the Stone Age. And yeah, so it reached out to the broader community as well.
Yes. Yeah, we haven't done a as you'll see in the paper, what we want to do in terms of very broad public consultation is wait until we have a more complete package. So the framework is really just the front end of this piece of work. It tells us what we're going to be measuring and what our measures might be, but then we want to go out and actually collect some of those indicators, and Connell can perhaps expand on some of that if you want to, collect the indicators and measure those indicators. So for June 2023, next year, we should be able to present and publish a package which says these are the things we think really contribute to wellbeing in Otago, and this is what we think they're looking like. And we think that's the kind of package that's right to put in front of the public to elicit a response and something that people can actually engage with in a really meaty way. So at this point, the groups that we've worked with have been selected from quite a broad cross-section of the community. We have, as you'll see in the paper, representatives from various walks of life, but no matter how many people you choose, there are always more points of view. So we do need to expand this later on.
So the first cut of this policy development obviously is just a sort of a broader connection with key stakeholders, and then eventually it'll filter down to some more thorough application process further down the track. And okay. Brian, thank you.
Cole, I was just reacting to the first comment that this is the first time that we've gone down the path of wellbeing, because Councillor Deaker can put me wrong, but many years ago we did the outcomes process, which looked at wellbeing, is my understanding, and it was a multi-dimensional approach and asked many of the questions that I think are being proposed here in terms of people, community, health, standard of living, place, all these types of things. But it just seemed to me it didn't necessarily go anywhere. And so my question is, really, is this going to go anywhere? Or is this going to sit on a shelf? It's not core business. We've got so much work to do just sorting out our environmental responsibilities. So please put me in my place. Tell me it's important. Tell me it's going to make a substantive difference.
Well, that's the plan. And I think what contributes to that is that it has measures in it. So against each of these outcomes, the domains that you have in the framework, there will be things to actually measure. And this is going to be a tool that we use when we're assessing policy and building our strategy documents. So this does link into other work that the strategy team is doing at the moment around the planning framework for regional council, and linking all our documents and pieces together so that they all work together in a more seamless way, which is important as we grow. And wellbeing is going to be very key for that. And I think, as Connell indicates in his paper, wellbeing is very much a space that regional councils and district councils as well are more and more moving into around the country.
So so how often will we do this measurement? So you're challenging me back, saying it's not going to sit on a shelf. it's going to be front of mind. We're going to measure it, and then ideally will we have the tools and levers to do anything about it once we get the data?
Some of the, sorry, through the chair, some of the pieces we will have, others we'll have to collaborate with other organisations around Otago for.
Oh,
and
how often are we going to measure?
Measuring once a year, I believe, is the point at this, is the plan at this point. Connell, can you expand on that?
I mean, we haven't formalised that yet. Having a chance to discuss the final recommendations around how often. The gist of it is probably that you might as well update the measures when they come in, right? And for most of the data that's available, that will probably be roughly every two. Some measures it will be every year, for some it will be every 2 years. And there'll be a few measures that draw on the census that are 5 yearly. So probably you're going to want to update the measures as they come in once a year, get someone to go through and sit down and just update the measures you've got, but maybe take a sort of 2 or 3 yearly cycle in terms of actually pulling together you don't want to overburden yourself with a massive amount of a sort of additional reporting that somebody's got to do. The trick is you also don't want it too far apart, because if there's too big a gap between when you update any report at the indicators, you end up having to redevelop the whole process and the set of skills all over again. So it seems to be, sort of based on experience elsewhere, that doing this sometime between, depending on the organisation, between yearly and 3 yearly seems to be the sort of optimal time frame to revisit, to have a sort of formal look at this.
Mr. Chairman,
Just that covers that topic off, or that question. Michael Laws.
I get the feeling that the train left the station a long time ago and that we're still on the platform. Where was the elected member input into any of this?
I'm not sure who wants to. James?
Well, it's I guess it's a level of service in the LTP, and that's what we're working from. Sorry, in the scheme of things, I guess I've come into this fairly recently, so I can't speak to its original genesis. But yes, it's been approved in the long-term plan.
Well,
governance.
But wait on, can I move on to that? But there's been a series of political judgments here that we've had no input into. Zero. I'll take you to the top of page 456, where you outline the principles of what you consider to be well-being. It shouldn't be a staff input, it shouldn't be a staff issue. That's for elected members to work out what is well-being. That's why we're elected to be elected members. Well-being is inherently a political or social judgment, and we haven't been involved in establishing any of these principles that are outlined in this paper. None. So at the top of principles, at the top of page 456, there are 4 outlined there: equity and the distribution of outcomes, the treaty partnership and how it's going to be reflected in wellbeing outcomes, sustainability for future generations, including the question of, are we being good ancestors? And then the 4th one, resilience. Resilience not just to earthquakes and things that might affect us as part of our planning, but financial crises and pandemics. Wouldn't have thought that was the core business of the Regional Council. And Pim, I'm just saying to you, before this goes one step further, elected members, all of us elected to represent our communities, have had no input into this at all. And that's simply not good enough.
You've got the opportunity now.
No, I haven't. No, I haven't.
I'm happy to do it.
So where do we go when, I mean, we are being asked to, in actual fact, move today, this along a way in the recommendations. But I'm struggling to see where elected members have had any input into this at all. And I just want somebody to point out to me where that occurred. Was there a workshop I missed? Perhaps an email. When did the views of my elected people in the Dunstan ward get reflected in this? Are they reflected at all? Apparently not. The people who have been consulted with have been chosen by staff. This isn't democracy.
Michael, can I respond?
If you like.
Yeah. Brian mentioned that this is an opportunity for us to be involved in this process. Clearly, the report has been based on the working group's analysis to this point. So as this policy goes down a development stage, what we've really got is a framework. Rather than starting with a clean sheet of paper, we've got some aspirations, targets. As you say, you've honed in on the wellbeing listed on page 4, 5. The wellbeing is listed on 4, 5, 6. So there's got to be a starting point at somewhere. But I hear what you're saying, and when I read the agenda, that was my first reaction was, oh no, we haven't seen this before. So I hear what you're saying. We need to be involved, and we've obviously, as governors, targeted a service delivery measure to focus on regional wellbeing, and so this is probably why we're here. Not perhaps the process hasn't been ideal, but we've landed now, and we need to embrace it going forward. Now, Pim's just, I don't know whether you heard, but said he would be keen to workshop this in the new triennium, obviously. So you're putting that on the table, Pim, is it understand? Yeah.
Yeah, listen, there are a series of political judgments required here. Political judgments by elected members, by governance.
Yeah.
This has gone down and made a series of political assumptions that we have had no role nor input into.
LTP.
It's in the annual.
The LTP didn't state this plan. Are you mad? The LTP didn't, in actual fact, outline this at all.
Okay.
Can we just have one person speaking at once, and then everyone will get a turn to respond. So just hold fire, please. Michael, have you completed?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to Kate, Hillary, Brian.
I have gone through the
Michael.
annual plan report 2022-23, page 9, and I shall send it to you. There is a level of service that says collect information on Otago regional wellbeing, economic, social, cultural and environmental, and identify significant issues. And the performance measure was a report on community wellbeing indicators, just for your reference. And now to report by the 30th of June.
Thank you. Hillary.
I wondered whether partially Councillor Law's cry for help could be addressed when we look at number 9 here, number 8, which says due to workload and time constraints for our iwi partners, Runaka still require an opportunity to properly assess the draft framework before it can be finalised. Perhaps council might also, due to time restraints or whatever, we haven't had a chance to properly assess this too. So perhaps we also, like Runaka, should have a look at the draft framework. Just a suggestion as to how we move forward. So both partners could have a look at it.
Thank you. Did you want to respond to that, Dan?
Yeah, I guess there's been a number of things going on here. One is that the process has been a little bit delayed because of COVID and our process, and that we would have anticipated when we started that they would have had a workshop with you before we reached this point. But because of the delay and then because of the election, we've been squeezed, and that's one of the reasons in relation to the iwi consultation, and also that this basically is a draft. It's a starting point, and as James said, we would be looking to work with that and look at, and it makes it easier when you're looking at a framework like this to actually have some indicators, some data to actually understand what it means. So that was our reason to actually then say, well, let's have a look at a bigger package where you have the framework and you have some indicators, and then we have a better conversation all round. And I think a workshop with council would certainly fit into that process.
I'm just saying, before the draft process is finalised, is the words used for our iwi partner, and just suggesting that we have that privilege as well.
Well, can I just, Mr. Chairman, very quickly?
Michael, I've got 2 or 3 other speakers.
Oh,
and
sorry. Okay. All right.
I'll come
Sorry.
back to you.
I can't see that. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Michael Decker.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. The only thing wrong with this draft framework is it's taken a long time to get here. And I accept what Anne and James have said about the time it's taken. Brian, you're absolutely right. This process started with the introduction of the 2002 Local Government Act. Way back in the early Helen Clark days, they introduced the concept of community wellbeing as being a responsibility that local government has to shoulder. And a number of us, and Gretchen and I were 2 of them, I can't think who else now, went out and consulted widely around Otago on what our constituents wanted to see in terms of Otago regional wellbeing. So it's not as though this is brand new. In fact, it's quite ancient, and it has taken an awful long to evolve to this stage. Having said all that, I think what the staff have come up with here, with the help of Connell, obviously, is very high quality work. And it reassures me, looking at the statements of outcome and the ways in which those outcomes will be measured and reported. It's surprisingly high quality, given the nature of the word well-being, which sounds so mushy and general and all-embracing, and all of that stuff, that it's hard to get objective and useful about a thing like well-beings. But for all those challenges, what has been come up with here as a draft framework, I think is excellent. In terms of political assumptions, I think Councillor Laws is making far more than the staff ever did. And what the staff have suggested here in this draft framework is a very solid set of givens, if you like, about what we expect our community to take on as a well-being aims. And that's possibly because of that initial consultation round, which led into our LTPs, which led into our annual plans, and has been preserved, albeit in a sort of a half-life state, for a long time until this got here. So I'm saying to all of you, bloody good job, given the challenge that it is. Connell, thank you for your guidance and bringing the paper to the stage where it's at now. Let's workshop it. Let's have a look. Let's put it into the induction package for new councillors. Let's start the measurement process. I'm looking forward to that. It'll be really good.
Thank you, Michael. Di's included a reference to or a motion that relates to a workshop happening in the new triennium or with the new council or something along those lines. I've got Brian, Gary, Kevin, and then Michael Laws, and then Alexa. Brian.
No, I'm done.
You're done, Gary.
Yeah, all I was going to do is move that we this paper lay on the table, continuing the workshop with new council.
Can you hold that thought? I'll come back to you.
Moved it now.
Discussing it right now, aren't we?
Okay.
Kevin. I'll come back to you.
Look, actually, I think that the protein might not have kicked off exactly to process or whatever, but the concept is really good. I mean, it's part of our vision for Otago, and how do we measure the well-being of our people? So at some stage, we've got to do that to ensure that we are doing everything else along the right way. Probably the only issue, and I agree with Councillor Calvert saying let's have a workshop on it, but that workshop should be after our iwi partners have done their critique of it, because at the end of the day, it's us that make the final decision on the final document. So I'd say finish your iwi discussions, then bring it to us to have a look and track their changes so we understand why any have been made from this original one, and then let's sit down and make an agreement. But that should be the process, because at the end of the day, we will be the decision makers. That's all I'd say to that.
Thank you. Michael Laws, and then Alexa, and I'll go back to Gary.
Are we speaking to the motion?
No, there's nothing been moved yet.
Oh, there's one from Gary, isn't there?
In a moment, yep, he's foreshadowed, yes.
Oh,
Speaking to the motion.
You'll be speaking to the motion. Do you want to speak to the motion then by the sound
yes,
of what?
well, I think Gary needs a seconder for his motion, doesn't he?
Okay, so I'll go back to Gary.
Carmen will second it.
You move what I have. Yes. So you move that it lies on the table until a workshop with the new council has occurred with the new council. Okay. And Carmen second. I'm just going to ask the question in terms of progress, etc. Does that cause any issues with progressing this work stream in any way, shape, or form?
I don't think so. I think we can continue looking at indicators. Any further that we get will be more to put in front of a workshop. So what this is foreshadowing, the report is due at the end of October at this point, as we've said, sort of pending getting proper iwi input into the framework. And the more complete it is, I guess, the more productive a workshop we can have on it.
Excellent. Thank you. So speaking to the motion, Michael Laws, and then Alexa.
Thank you. Whatever was put into the LTP, we're an environmental organisation in good part, struggling to complete a very heavy work program under a very tight schedule. And we are moving well beyond our brief to move into this area, which would seemingly be the responsibility of central government rather than local. I'm well aware of the Local Government Act of 2002, but it never envisaged 20 years later that the Otago Regional Council would consider itself responsible for A, determining what the well-being of Otago was, and B, then creating an overhead policy document which would apparently drive all other organisations around it. I'm also extremely concerned by the fact that if you go to paragraph 36, that with this progress of this particular policy has moved to the point where 7 key factors and associated outcomes have already been determined upon related to people, community and place, without any input from those elected members who are sitting around this table, whose primary responsibility it is to represent our communities at and to the Otago Regional Council. There's not an awful lot you can disagree with because a lot of it's mom, God and apple pie stuff. But I would have thought that in actual fact, community wellbeing is a discussion we need to have to see whether or not those 7 in actual fact fit that criteria and what others we might add. But I also want to flag that this has got to have to the program where a working group and an advisory group were set up, that a whole series of other district councils, iwi, the Southern District Health Board, the Ministry of Social Development and staff from the ORC were involved. And we've had no input into that at all up until now. And that concerns me greatly. That is not a way a healthy organisation works, by ignoring its governance team. I will certainly be supporting the motion.
Thank you. Alexa.
I just wanted to say that this is, I think this is a really, really good piece of work on a lot of levels. And one of the really, really key levels is what we are seeing, and there's increasing evidence for people are studying now at all sorts of levels of government and other institutions around our loss of faith and trust in our institutions, and our loss of, and not just in our institutions, also between people. And so there is really good reason to have this undergoing, apart from the legislative framework that it sits within. So I think this is a really, really good start. There's lots of terms in that paper, such as social cohesion, that at this point don't have any real descriptor as to what those are. And we're going to have to get very, very specific. I was at a presentation on the weekend that talked about social cohesion from the perspective of police intelligence. And apparently there's really, 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 really good social cohesion among some elements of society and very poor elements of social cohesion among the more progressive elements of society. So these things need to be defined, need to be really worked through. We need a glossary to understand what every term means in its very specific situations. So I kind of see this as a living document, and I've already explained that it's going to be updated yearly and so on. I feel that okay, there hasn't been a lot of governance input into some of those things. Maybe Michael has some points around those, but we have that now and we'll continue to have that. And I'm pretty happy at where this is going. I'm not sure what motion's sitting on the table at the moment.
Thanks, Alexa. So the motion is that this report lie on the table until a workshop is being held with the new council.
Yeah, possibly fair.
Any further speakers, Gretchen, and then I'll go, if there are no other speakers, I'll go back to Gary for one reply.
Yeah, just building on what other people have been talking about and trying to get up to speed, I guess, in this space as well, which I agree with Alexa is a really important space. We need to be understanding about well-being and sustainability, and to have sustainability you have to understand broadly all of those things. But I did listen to Councillor Laws as well, and whilst I may not have said it in exactly the same words, I think doing this, you want to do it really well, and listening to Michael Deaker as well. I did go on a roadshow and tried to come up with outcomes for Otago by visiting multiple agencies and councils and people throughout Otago, and I felt even then we hadn't made a robust job of understanding holistic well-being and visions for Otago at that point. And it got taken away from local government as something we needed to assess at that time, I think, because everyone struggled in that space. I'm not saying it's not a really important space, but I think if we are in this space and we're going to develop indicators, would we do this in partnership with someone other than just the regional council? Potentially we might. I don't know whether we would do it through a mayoral forum or some other way of tapping into as many sources of these indicators as we could, but going it alone, we do need to, I think, step back and have a really good think about quality and what the end product will be used for. So I did listen to what Councillor Laws said there in a workshop. Yep, that's a good idea. But I do think this is quality work doing in a short space of time, bringing together. I don't know if we'll get to anything different to what you've already got there in terms of a framework. It's just how do you gather the quality data from this point on. Yep.
Thank you. Kate, then Gary.
I share some of the frustration Michael Laws has, because we're not in the loop at the start of this and understanding the process that will generate the work. So how big or small it will be, which I find frustrating. But, and I also want to remind people that the Local Government Act changed with the wellbeings taken out and then put back in relatively recent times.
Yeah.
So it has been a boomerang sort of thing that's come back to us to do. Oddly, if you go back to something we've just signed off, which is our annual report, not only do we talk about values, which I think those values all underpin a well-being and a caring of our environment, but the people that live in it. And I think sometimes our frustration, and especially Michael's, is that our comms doesn't necessarily meet our ambitions for the very people that and the well-being of the people that we interact with. Under the heading, what will we do? The very second word is the well-being of Otago's communities.
Yeah.
Now and in the future is at the heart of what we do, and so it is core in our aims and objectives and our purpose. But I think the process here is that one that's got legs without us ever understanding that, and that's probably more a comment for you to consider in the future. When we start a work program, getting someone in from the council Laws on if they want to, and or I think that's matter, but also making sure that the expectation or the work being undertaken is at the scope that the council thinks is needed. So I support this motion because I think it is a discussion that we should perhaps have had earlier, but that we should have before we go any further.
Thank you.
Very little to add, other than I think it's a logical thing to do. There's still two perspectives to come, which will be the iwi partner position, and then also the councillor input with the new council. And I think both will be valuable. So other than that, my motion stands. Thank you.
Cool. No further discussion. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
I'm just waiting. Michael, no, all good. Anyone against? Motion carried.
That's very good reading.
And Michael, I just wonder whether you could just turn your video off.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
Oh, look lively.
Too nicely.
And James, Connell, thank you very much. Well done.
Very good.
To you, and I understand that someone whispered in my ear that you may be moving on. So on behalf of all of us here, thank you very much for your contribution. You work in a space that hasn't got a huge interface with the general public. I'd probably argue that now this particular document you probably are doing more so, but often working behind the scenes at that high level strategic documents, and it's probably a challenging space. So we really appreciate what you've done, and we wish you well for the future. Cheers.
Who's going down loss?
Moving on to 8.9, which is budgeting for operational deficits. This report was referred to Council 21st September 2022 Audit and Risk Subcommittee. The report provides clarity on steps to take to end the practice of budgeting for operational deficits. We've got Nick with us, I believe. Still with us?
Yes.
Yep. Take the report as read. Nick, was there anything you wanted to highlight, emphasise?
No, I think you summed it up. It went to Audit and Risk last week, and was the Audit and Risk Subcommittee referred it to come to Council this week. So yeah, take it as read, and over to you.
Thank you. Any queries or questions? Hillary.
Not so much a question, but perhaps by way of explanation. At Audit and Risk, we thought that this should be in front of Council. Where we headed with it was that we will be getting information back from our finance people and from Dr. Warren to tell us as we go into the annual plan process what steps they recommend us to take to achieve these things, both in budgeting for deficits and not budgeting deficits, heading down that direction, and in not creating deficits. So how to try and curtail councillors' natural temptation to spend more money given half a chance. And just so where we're heading is to get from that. Now that Nick has very nicely laid out the issue, the thing that says at the top is to its purpose. We're heading for that purpose. That purpose isn't in this document. This doesn't provide clarity on steps to take to end the practice. So that's the next step of the process. It says here's the problem. And so we're Audit and Risk has asked for, and Dr. Warren's offered for him and his staff to get in amongst the next part of the process for the annual. Is that a fair summary?
Thanks, Hillary.
I'm just happy to move the report.
Seen by Hillary. Any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you, Nick. Moving on to 8.10, which is the report to Council from Chair of the Audit and Risk Subcommittee, and that's obviously Hillary. The terms of reference of the Audit and Risk Subcommittee require the subcommittee to conduct an annual review of its work and for the chairperson to provide a report to Council. Hillary, we're in your hands.
Yes, I had been unaware, for which I apologise, that I was supposed to be writing an annual report. So this for the triennium, not annually, but the intent was to outline where I thought we'd come from, where we're at, and some things about where we might go, just as a background paper for the incoming audit and risk people to look at, and I'll have different priorities and different thoughts and things, but to also put this in front of councillors so that the ones who weren't hanging on every word at audit and risk meetings can, yes, you know who you are.
I was hanging on to every word. Don't worry, Corey.
Can have that in written form if they cared to read that.
I did read.
Thanks, Hilary.
I'm open to any questions anybody might have.
Any questions for Hilary? Carmen?
Through the chair. Councillor Kell, this is a bit of a kick up the jacksie for us, isn't it? This is really what you're saying. You know, we've sort of had a bit of an open checkbook and we can't keep doing it. We can't keep taking one jam jar to the next jam jar if there's nothing in there, isn't it? This is quite, I actually think this is quite a concern, and I really appreciate this because it's not only the highlights, but there's some work in progress, and the work not yet to begun, these addresses actually quite makes me nervous, you know, and there's some things there that I think, well, where did we go wrong? What can we learn? You've highlighted it quite well there. I thank you for it, but I think we have to be very, very cautious about what's going to be ahead of us. And you've pulled no punches. I really like that. It's probably the best one I've ever read because it's just simple and it makes sense. And you've put it how it is. So I thank you for that. I'm sorry you're going, and I do thank you very much for all you've done. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll go to Michael Deaker, then Michael Laws.
Much with the same tone as Carmen. Mr. Chairman, I thank Hilary for having written this. One, it's a very good piece of report writing. Two, I confess that I don't think I've ever darkened the doorway of the Audit and Risk Subcommittee. But I have appreciated what that committee has done, that subcommittee has done. It was a good innovation. It was timely. And this report is timely as well. I think that Hilary has done a very, very good job for us as an outgoing council and for the incoming group, whoever they might be. So I just want to say thank you. Well done.
Excellent. Thank you. Michael Laws and then Gary.
I'd like to endorse the former two councillors and their remarks. Hilary, you've done an outstanding job in this area, and we are the better for not just your contribution, but for the intellectual heft and resolution that you brought to this particular issue. But I want to ask you a question, if I may. And that question is around legal costs, which is a budget blowout that I think has happened in every council on which I've served over the last 5 years, 6 years. And I wanted to get some indication from you as to how you think we might properly or better properly manage and budget for legal costs and things like, for example, the Pankhurst inquiry, just matters that just came out of nowhere, but you have to respond and you have to respond properly. How do we cope?
Thanks, Michael. We have discussed this at Audit and Risk, and I'm heartened by Pim's response to the issue of those and other such things. We've tended to deal with the budget sort of items as if they're unpredictable. But if we can predict that there's $2 million a year of these, then we should, and you won't see this, Michael, but Pim is nodding his head, we should put into the budget $2 million of, we can predict they're there, but we don't know what they are. And that includes things like legal costs. So when we know that we spend just on these sorts of things, $2 million a year, we can factor that into a budget. And that's the way of dealing with those sometimes there'll be one-offs like the flood protection and things. All of a sudden, you know, the Clyde Dam fails or whatever, and that's not the same. But when there's a predictable run of unpredictable items, we can factor that into the budget. Is that an answer for you?
Yeah, so basically we need to add a couple of $1 million each year to our budget for those to budget.
It's rapacious lawyers.
Correct.
Yes. Yes. There's also another addition to that can be to have a Ways and Means Committee as well that sits in there and looks at some sorts of things and interacting partially with the delegations and things, and perhaps, and thinks, can we avoid that happening again? What did we do that made all of a sudden we spent $250,000 on something? Could we have avoided doing that if we'd done it differently and things? So a committee actually looking at some of those things and seeing if that would be helpful to PIM, just when, if, because some of those unpredictable things we didn't actually need to have if we could have done it differently.
Thank you. Gary?
I'd like to also thank Hilary for her very comprehensive oversight to the Audit and Risk Committee. I think she's taken it to a new level of scrutiny that it has been in the past. I'd like to thank her for her very comprehensive report that dates back to 106 BC, and I would like to move it that we noted, please.
Excellent.
Should get Hilary to second it.
I think I should. Yes.
I'll be happy to second it.
So it's been moved by Hilary, seconded by Gary. Kevin?
Yeah, look, I just want to endorse a lot of comments that we've happened. Actually, organisational risk is what we're talking about at Audit and Risk. So it actually is a team game.
Yeah.
And I think what we've done under the stewardship of Councillor Calvert has actually made it into a team game. And I just think we're on a very good path. At the end of the day, balancing budgets, Mr. Donnelly and his team does an exceptional job preparing all the reports and everything. But there's a whole group behind that have actually got to sit and say, well, actually, we need to balance these budgets. So that's the part that's being hammered at us. But we're actually, as part of that committee, we've actually got to dive down deep and be comfortable asking those tough questions, because that's imperative that we do ask them. And that protects not only the ORC, it protects our community, but and most importantly, it protects our staff. So we actually need to ensure that we understand our risk and doing that job properly. So Hilary, it's actually been a pleasure. At times I've wondered where you've been coming from, and we often talk about that you'll be coming from way over there and I'm over here somewhere, but we've always ended up that 1 and 1 equals 2. And that's been an exceptionally good part of the working relationship. I just need to add a quick point in for Andrew Douglas, our independent, who there is thoughts of definitely getting him back next year. Well, that will be for the new council and possibly putting him as a co-chair position, so he's got a wee bit more opportunity to. He's just been absolutely invaluable. He's been a great fall for all of us and quite sensational. But again, he's been driven along by the chair of the committee, Councillor Calvert. So thanks very much for the work, and we've got something really, really good to work from. And hopefully Cicero gave you a bottle of wine when you went through those words with him. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Kevin. Look, yeah, just from my perspective, Hilary brings a forensic eye to, in terms of looking at detail, and that's obviously been really appreciated, and Audit and Risk as a committee that I've never sat on in my local government life. So it was a learning curve, and we really appreciated Hilary's efforts. And one of the areas that Hilary was hot on was with regards to the risk register, where we had an independent assessment done with the risk register, and we had the opportunity to, I suppose, put a governance lens across that, and that was a really useful exercise and valuable not only for us as elected members, but I think valuable for the organisation where that governance lens hadn't been included up until that point. So that was a really good process. So thank you very much. No further speakers. If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Okay, so moving on to direct number delegations. This is 8.11.
I'm happy to move that, please.
That's the 5 recommendations.
Second.
Kevin, are there any questions? Everyone's comfortable? And there's no debate?
One
There.
one little quick administrative note, just to correct the spelling of my name, please.
Which we asked the
Within
last time.
following papers.
And if you're floating back up, at what stage will you take a breath?
Waiting.
That's optional. Are there any other minor corrections? Kate, I think did you put your hand up?
No, I'm happy to second. I wasn't sure you got a second.
we moved to second.
That's fine.
Yep.
That's good. It was his name was incorrectly spelled.
Okay, so no further debate. Thank you for the points made there, Eric. Kevin, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye to those 5. Against? Carried. Thank you. Moving on to 8.12, which are the documents assigned under council seal.
I'm happy to second it.
Okay, seconded by Chairman. Are there any questions? No. Any debate? No. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. 8.13, acknowledgement of retiring councillors. At the end of the training, councillors Michael Deak and Hilary Calvert are retired, and this is an opportunity for council to express their thanks for the service given by the councillors for their terms in office, and provides the chair the opportunity to express the council's appreciation for the 21 years of service rendered by Councillor Michael Deaker and the 3 years of service rendered by Councillor Hilary Calvert.
Can I just, as a point of order, say that I have done my voting, so you can say what you like.
I'll just make a brief comment. I'll make a brief comment and then I'll just go open it up to councillors to make their comments, and I'll present you with a certificate, and then we'll do the same for Hilary. So, Michael, appreciation to you and gratitude for a long service with this council, and I know you've served on other councils, particularly Invercargill City Council. I'm not sure whether there are any others. However, it is over a long period of time, a big chunk of your life. When I think about Michael around the table, I think of an orator. I think of a person who is able to use the minimum amount of words to be able to express a view that may be 11 views around the table, but you have that ability to bring those views together and collate and verbalise where we've often landed. And as chair over the last couple of years, I've really appreciated your contribution, and particularly in that sense. In the paper, it's talked about the various committees that you've been involved in and chaired over your 21 years. And the Eco Fund is something that has in more recent times been pretty close to your heart, and you've chaired that group over the last probably, I think, 3 years or thereabouts, maybe 4, 5, whatever. And, it's been, use the term, it's been your baby pretty much. And I know you've had the support of other councillors around you during that process, usually 3 or 4. My apologies, I couldn't make it that last time. But it's been a really successful fund. And I think a lot of the success has been the way that you've talked about it at this table, where you've encouraged groups to apply. You've been a real champion of that fund, and once again we've appreciated that as well. So what I'm going to do now is just open it, and people, councillors, can speak around the table, and then you'll have your right of reply, and I'll give you your certificate, and then we'll follow the same process. So I'll just open it up now. Brian and Gretchen.
Oh, well, firstly, thank you, a huge thank you. This is a significant day for you. It's also a significant day for me. Like, as long as I've been on council, I've been here a while too, you have always been on council, and like, so you've been part of that. You were here before I started, so you know I've always respected what you've brought to this council. I like what Andrew said in terms of an orator. I've certainly seen you as an orator as well, and many other things. I remember in the 90s, when I came back from overseas, I used to, from time to time, I would hear this DECA report on the radio, and I always tried to figure out how this guy, he must have been a reporter, he was a principal, he was a deputy mayor, how we could do all this together. And I sort of imagined you running down the school corridor to jump into the telephone booth to put your report out on the radio. And it was, from my perspective, it was insightful, it was punchy, it was professional, it was all those things. And then when I met you at council, it was the same again, you know, insightful, punchy, professional, and I thought that was just absolutely marvelous. But as well as that, over and above that, you had various skills that you brought to this table that were unique. I felt like, you know, your geography background, your Southland background. We've already talked about your oratory background, your whānau background. I mean, how many kids and grandkids have you got, Mike? I'm trying to remember. I mean, I think half of Otago and Southland seems to be. I actually was driving out of Te Ana the other day. There was DECA Road, and I thought, yeah, they're probably related to Michael. From my perspective, it's been an absolute joy to be from one of the things that when I left council, which could be the end of this term, one of the joys of this experience is being a councillor alongside you. So I thank you for everything you've said and done. I've enjoyed it. I've respected it. Thank you.
Thank you. Gretchen.
Yeah, I, like Brian, have enjoyed 18 of your 21 years on council with you. Yeah, congratulations. Happy 21st. That's an amazing achievement. And as others have said, your contribution to local government across New Zealand has been really huge. Thank you for the support that you've always given me. As I think the youngest ever regional councillor elected, you gave me support in a time when diversity was very low in regional councils, and I thank you very much for that. You've always been kind, you've always been calm, you're very intelligent, and you always have community at your heart. You really care about people, you really do. You provide that much needed quick wit. We all cherish that. When there's a bit of conflict or tension, you cut that in just the right way with your oratory skills. I think of you in the policy space. You were Mr. Policy ORC for many years, and you continue to offer great advice and knowledge there. Also profile, I think you set up a profile group on ORC at a time when ORC deliberately had a philosophy of keeping its head down, and the least that was heard about it out there in the community, the better. And you challenged that and started a working group called Profile. And that was a bit of an uphill battle at that point, but that was you. And you took us to where we needed to go in terms of comms and the space that we have come to, which is vastly better. So well done there. Yeah, Eco Fund we've talked about. I remember lots of field trips with you and your knowledge of geology and landforms and your love of Otago and the landscapes as well as people. You have right in your core there a love for the land too. And Māori Tanga, you have pushed this council into a space of partnership, but Te Reo and your whānau connections, but you're standing with iwi as well in Otago, who aren't here today to recognise that, but I know that they would be thinking that as well. And yeah, your standing in the community at large is really huge. Yeah, the broadcasting days is no one that doesn't know Michael Tika. So you'll get the phone calls as well, and you hear a lot as well about what's going on. I remember you too for buses, and gosh, that was a stuck record on those smoky diesel buses. So I think we can credit you for an upgrade in the fleet as well, to be honest. That happened over a number of years, but yep, you're definitely a stuck record on upgrades needed. So thank you for your persistence on matters of importance, and also for your total commitment to community. Really, I think whoever's elected is going to really miss having your knowledge and experience around the table. Thank you very much, Michael.
Thank you. Any further come?
Michael, my associate with you is festival with Southlanders. But it goes back a little bit. My mum was a nurse, and she actually nursed Michael's mum and Michael's dad on different occasions in the hospital. My mother wasn't one to say a lot of words, but when she found out that I was elected and I was on with Michael, she said, I'm very delighted there that you are his deputy on communications. And it was funny because in my previous life at the DCC, I never got to meet you, but there was always that drainage problem on Littlebourne Road. And I can remember this man wandering down the path that we just put a digger through and not very happy. And so there's had to be a few ramifications, but again, you never raised your voice. And
Got a brand new path.
you did, just quietly on ratepayers, I think, probably still paying for it. You never raised your voice, but it was great to be on the comms with you, and I really appreciate that. Thank you. And I always remember you would talk about when you were a, an inspector with the education board, and going up to some really remote places and deciding whether you would shut schools or keep schools open because there was children coming on. And I used to think, wow, the well-being and the welfare that you thought about wasn't just the land and the soil, it was actually the people, the well-being as well, which we just talked about this morning. So I never forgot that. And, I just think we're very lucky to have you, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Kate, then Gary.
Very briefly, because I've only done 3 years with you, but you've only had to suffer me for 3 years, shall I say. But we've had the joy of being at collaborative council meetings and before that with ORC and DCC. I reiterate what other people have said, kind, polite, humble enough to apologise, but very rightly proud of many good things, mostly good things that you've done. You've not only talked the talk, but you've walked the walk and bust the buses, which is more than most of us can say. And you've been out there doing it. We've got very little in common, but a great passion for geography, and we've enjoyed sharing our love of maps and things. And the wonderful thing about having a debate with Michael is you can, at the end of it, you can agree to disagree and move on, and you're it's just another day at the office, which is great. I think what I want to say to you, Michael, is go and get lost, because I've never seen you happier when you're out and about getting lost in Otago. And I have seen him and heard about the stories of getting completely lost up Mount Watkins Road, which you're very familiar with, Mr. Chairman, and ending up at McRae's, which is quite hard to do, really, without knowing you're lost. Most people would have turned around at least 20 k's earlier. But may you make the most of a wonderfully well-earned retirement. The years of service, you've done the other 25% of the Queen's 75% of her life. It's been 25% on this council of your life is an incredible effort, because I know you've done many other years of service in other ways. And so thank you very, very much. May you enjoy a well-earned retirement with good health.
Thank you. Gary, then Hillary.
Thank you, Michael. I think it's 9 years since I first sat and met you, and have worked with you since then, and missed 3 years in between. But from that time till now, you haven't aged one bit at all. You're still as sharp as a tack from when you were then. I've always found you very polite and helpful and a very sensible, sound voice around the table. Appreciated the help that you've given me. You've been prepared to call a spade a spade. You've also been quite prepared to put me in my place when you felt I needed to, and I think I've been on the receiving end of I don't know what meeting Gary Kelleher thought he was in. But look, you've given so much of your deserved retirement to the ORC, and I just think that is very much appreciated around this table, and I wish you all the best for your retirement from now on.
Thank you, Hilary.
I just wanted to comment on two things, one of which other people haven't, but somebody should. Thank you for your pedantry. Just had to be acknowledged, you know, and that's because words matter, and that's what we're here for. And they matter to you, and I really appreciate that. And the other thing I have appreciated with you, Michael, is that I probably don't politically agree on all sorts of things with you, but we have managed to not so much agree to disagree, but to talk things out until we got to a proper place. And I think that that's the
like each other.
Yes, that's the heart of democracy, is to not try and put two opposing views in and thresh them out and somebody wins. The heart of democracy is to actually turn over ideas, look at them, see how to get the most out of all of them and come up with a result. So I think, to me, you have been the thing that has shown democracy at work around this table. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Kevin, and then Michael Laws.
Firstly, thanks to Hilary for finding that big flash word that meant words actually matter. Because I was going to say something along those lines, but thank you, Hilary, for putting the flash word, and you know I won't remember it, Michael. But I've got an indelible memory of Michael that will sit with me, and that was his te reo response to our welcome at Otago Marae. And to me, that was exceptionally special and a very uncomfortable spot for me. And this gentleman took over, and I just thought it was absolutely sensational, and it gave me great comfort that I had that around me. And secondly, in my calculations, you've got another 12 years of hard work, because that's approximately on the law of averages when the Highlanders will win again. So in your retirement, you better be down at that stadium doing your bit. So thanks, Michael.
Thank you. Michael Laws.
Michael, when I was just starting in politics, I was given a Christmas gift, and it was a book called Deeker's Diaries. Do you remember that?
Remember it well.
And I read that diary because Michael was, at that time, one of the most famous commenters and columnists in New Zealand. And his Radio New Zealand pieces during the week were listened to by, gosh, I always thought almost everybody, and I'm sure that's true. You and I inhabit polar ends probably of the political spectrum, Michael, but I've always respected you as an intelligent, compassionate, and always well-researched individual who we have sparred over the last 6 years on many issues. But at the end of the day, your view was always reasoned and researched and persuasive too often for my liking. But that was because you bested me, Michael. I really think that your 21 years of service to the Otago Regional Council will be unlikely ever to be bested, and that I hope that we more formally commemorate you in the next triennium for the service that you've provided to all of Otago. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate that.
Thank you. We're in your hands now. Sorry.
Sorry, no, that's okay. Michael, I've known you for the least amount of time, although I do remember your reports very well. But I'd be remiss not to thank you on behalf of staff, because in the short period of time that I have known you and had the opportunity, as Michael Laws just said, to listen to you, I've reflected on the fact that sometimes you can be as effective in holding staff to account by being constructive and positive as you can be by being critical and negative. And I think you've taught all of us that actually, and you've certainly taught me. So on behalf of all of the staff over the 21 years that you've been on this council and all of the chief executives, but I say thank you for your constructive contribution to this organisation. Appreciate that.
Andrew, I got missed out.
Oh, sorry.
It's all right.
I
Not
didn't mean to.
back earlier.
I think so.
I just wanted to say, because Michael's my closest neighbour here,
Of course.
and you've been so helpful to me over the past few weeks. I know your family from Ryland, who are all activists. And I just want to thank you for when you offered me really good advice and help. I've always understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew, and thank you so much to all of you. Yeah, that was moving and very much appreciated. I didn't know I was so appreciated, I must say. I've got a few things I'd like to say, Andrew, and I'd like to start with why I'm here. I've clearly thought about this and I've made a few notes because I don't want to get it wrong. 21 years ago, the reasons I stood for the ORC were fourfold. One, I'd done some work as a consultant for one or two Whanganui Regional Council, it was then, now Horizon. And over those several years, I really came to admire what they did. I liked what they did. I liked the work. So that was one reason why when ORC came along, I thought that'd be a good place to be. Secondly, as has been pointed out, and as Kate and I have often talked about, I am a geographer. That is my professional background. And I saw and still see regional councils as the embodiment of geographic principles. They're geography in practice. That's what regional councils do. Third reason was that I was relatively new to Otago. And I wanted to know more about this region and to make some sort of contribution to it, because that's just what I like to do. It was interesting talking to Gavin at lunchtime about the early days and how much he and I, and I'm sure many others, really enjoyed the field trips we used to do in those days. Looking at geographical features, looking at natural hazards, looking at landforms, looking at where things were going. And the fourth reason I stood was that, as somebody had mentioned, I had 6 years as a city councillor on Invercargill, and I had really enjoyed that, give or take equal. So that was the why I stood. The how of me as a regional councillor does not include that overused word passionate. During elections, everybody's passionate about every issue. I don't think I've ever been guilty of being passionate about any issue that's come to this table. I simply wanted to help ORC be more effective, be sensible, and be successful. That was the how I said about being a councillor. Other people can be successfully passionate about long-jawed galaxids, about weed control, about public transport, and about regional plans for everything. But I came here to play a part in Otago maintaining and improving its superb geography, and to help as part of a disparate team. That's the role I saw that I had as a councillor at this table, was to be part of a team of very different individuals aiming in the same general direction. I'm certainly glad I was part of the team that developed the Eco Fund. It's funny you should mention that, Andrew, because you reminded me of the character called Yossarian in Catch-22, for those who've read that wonderful novel. Yossarian was an officer who, when the officer's mess was opened, and it was splendid, it was brand new, and Yossarian leant on the bar with a feeling of intense pride that he had contributed almost nothing to setting it up. And I felt that way about the Eco Fund. It was a great success. It is a great success. It'll be more successful. But all the hard work was done by others, particularly the staff. And I've got to give Peter Bodecker credit for that too, because it was his idea. We as councillors simply took the idea away from the chief executive and did it ourselves with a great deal of creative staff assistance. So I am delighted to have been involved in that, to have chaired meetings and so on, because it, as an eco fund, has given those passionate people out there in Otago who have got the time and the energy to make our geography even more beautiful. I was never in my 21 years here ambitious in leadership sense. I was prepared to do anything any chairperson asked me to do, but I never wanted to be the chair or the deputy chair or anything like that. To me, was being in the team that mattered, and it's still to this day is what I was all about. I wanted to be here and argue my beliefs, and that didn't always work. I did not believe that a regional council should invest in a plastic roof over a rugby pitch, but you can't win them all. I did believe that Otago Regional Council needed an increasingly close working relationship with mana whenua, and I'm delighted by the courage and the success of those who have made mana to mana work and who have brought on Māori committee membership. The strength overall and the capability of this organisation has lifted dramatically in the last 5 or 6 years. And the move towards biculturalism has been a notable part of that lift. So in balance, it's been good the last 21 years. I have learnt a lot, as I set out to do. I do feel part of Otago, as I set out to be, even though I am still a Southland Takama, and I always will be. I've met and worked with a lot of outstanding people, many of them staff, many of them councillors who were like me here to guide and contribute to decision making. Michelle and I are passionate about one thing, and that's about our 8 children, our 22 grandchildren. Their futures have always been and will always be my motivation. So thank you for all the work that you do, councillors and staff, for all of our futures. I wish you well.
Certificate of recognition. I'm sure you'll find somewhere you may have to pull down one of your beautiful paintings that you. Well done. Thank you for that.
Thank you all, that's handsome. And it will be hung in a place where at least I can see it.
Is that when you're sitting down or you're standing up, Michael?
Okay, moving on to part 2 of this process, and I was just reflecting on Michael, Hillary and Brian's location where they live, and I've often thought about the Opaho Mafia, but I don't know whether I should start with that opening line, but I already have. But Hillary, can I say a big thank you to you over not only over the last 3 years, and we've known each other for a lot longer than that. Obviously, we've worked together along the road on the city council, and then a bit over 3 years ago, I noticed you were up on I wasn't sure whether it was the municipal chambers or the cathedral, in a light show one Friday night, and there you were canvassing standing for the Otago Regional Council. So you made your way along the road to this organisation, but just thinking about elected members who have been involved in a regional council, a territorial authority, a district or city council, and have been parliamentarians. And we've got 2 around this table in that category. And it's quite, I would suggest, a pretty special and unique situation. You've experienced all those leadership roles, and we've been lucky to have you here for a relatively short period of time, but at times you probably thought it was a lot longer than 3 years. But personally, yeah, just want to acknowledge, we've had a few challenges over the last triennium, and really appreciated your guidance at times where I needed that, like I mentioned before, that forensic eye, just made sure that I didn't put a foot wrong. We're following certain processes that have been set out by this council. So really appreciated that support. We've already talked about audit and risk. Your co-chair role on finances has been invaluable. The finances of this organisation are in good shape, and the fact that you've been a steady, firm hand in that space is we've appreciated that as well. So thank you for all of that. I hope you can spend some more time with our inner Turihua, if that's your plan. It may not be your plan, but let's hope you can do what you want to do. So thank you so much. Once again, we'll just go through the same process, and speakers, Kate.
This is the 4th time that I've had to spend with Hilary in a role. It started off in my law degree. I suffered being taught professionals by Hilary and Christine French. And then I had the pleasure of quite a few years of being on the Otago Central Rail Trail Trust with Hilary. And that is an odd role in reflecting on Hilary as a person. It's not at all, because she's a very generous behind the scenes person who gives a lot of her time and to other causes, and the work she did in promoting something that was not wanted by either the DCC or the Central Otago District Council at that time, and championed it and did an absolutely fantastic job, reflects on Hilary as a person and what she does behind the scenes. I then had 1 term on DCC with Hilary. She doesn't stay long, but she does a lot in her short time on anything. And like a good cheese, she's even improved in time, because of the 4th time she's been outstanding. And so it's really interesting that Hilary's picked up on democracy, talking about Michael. At no point could you criticise Hilary for not wanting democracy and the good processes. And a dog with a bone with these things. She's we terrier. She will absolutely ensure that good process and proper process is done with best of intent, and always a little glint in her eye. A wee bit mischievous at times, but always good fun. Very bad to sit opposite, because she's just, you catch her eye and it can be very, very bad for one. But Hilary is a very kind and thoughtful and generous person. Not everyone sees that as the rigours of politics. And I just want to reflect on her listening ability out in the community that will be lost around this table, because she does reflect a view that of a lot of people that often don't get a voice around this council table or a council table. It has been a pleasure. May you enjoy any blue cheese that is equally good in the time. And thank you very much for all that you've given to this council and this term. It's been hard, but very well done.
Thank you. Michael Laws.
I was just thinking before, as I was looking at the candidates standing for political office in the Dunedin ward, and thinking not only and I shouldn't say this, but I hope the 3 members sitting around the table are back around there on October the 9th, but that how much we're going to miss both Michael and Hilary for different reasons around our council table. And that loss is going to be palpable. Michael for his sense of compassion, and Hilary because she's one of the smartest political operators I've seen, and I've seen a few. She was, in many ways, Andrew, as you will know, the power behind the throne in the last 3 years, a person who had an immense amount of influence over the directions that we chose to go. And I think that her intellect is something that I shall always respect and admire her for, but also her ability to know that when something needed to be done differently, she had the ability to adapt and do so in the greater good. Hilary, you took some of the blame for a collective decision that we made about 18 months ago, when that blame should have been collective. But can I just say that I don't think I've enjoyed working with any elected councillor as much as I've enjoyed working with you. I've loved your intellect. I've loved your probing questions. I've loved you taking me down so many verbal rabbit holes that I was the one that was still stuck down there and you were on to something else. It has been an absolute delight, and I wish you and your wonderful husband all the retirement and all the grace that is your journey. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Michael. Hilary and Michael, both of you will miss the fact that the Oahu bus is no longer getting a serving, whether it's late or on time, or you've missed it, or you've had complaints. Very reliable bus service. That's what we won't know now. I'm sure it'll continue to be reliable, no doubt. You are very kind. I mean, I can think of a number of occasions that cakes have come in and you've just quietly put some lovely baking for all of us in there. And I think that's extremely kind. We'll find out someone's birthday, like Gary's or something like that. And some days, Hilary, you say things and I've got to look up the damn word in the dictionary and I'm thinking, Cross, where'd you get that from? But your thinking is way out here. You know, it's miles and miles and miles apart. But I mean, you've shown today too, you're such a clever cookie, how you can, your intellect, elocution, but also how you can articulate a report. For a dummy like me, who's not you know, who's finance, but my God, I got it. And I really thank you for that. And I talked about that with you this morning, amongst other things. And it's also, as I said, you're a way to articulate how you see the big picture that perhaps a lot of us haven't thought of. And that's not easy to do, to persuade in a way. You may not be necessarily changing the motion, but you're making us think about other parts that we must consider. And I thank you for that and your witty sense of humour. It's been appreciated as you are. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Excellent.
I've enjoyed working with you, Hilary. It's been, we've often come from very different perspectives, which is fine, but we always manage to find a way to talk and usually come to some sort of consensus. And I have really enjoyed your willingness to pick up the phone and have a discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
Totally. I mean, I think having met Hilary 3 years ago, I think now she is definitely a friend. I've really been impressed by her performance around the table here. She's a very legal mind, a very political mind. She is a very caring person. And my daughter, new to Dunedin, starting a student life, had a care package delivered from Hilary. You know, so those sorts of things are over and above, and yeah, certainly intend to continue what I think is a strong friendship. Thank you.
Thank you. Right.
Yeah, cool. I thought, what am I going to say when Hilary goes? Yes. You know, reality is that we have disagreed on quite a lot of things. It hasn't been plain sailing for me in terms of, and I'm sure it hasn't been plain sailing for Hilary, to be fair. I mean, one thing I will say is that Hilary has challenged me a lot, you know, and I genuinely thank you for that. And also I've learned a lot, because believe it or not, even if we don't disagree, my ears are still, takes a little bit of time. You know, I sort of work some of this stuff through. One thing I'm a little bit annoyed about is I reckon you and Deeker got together and said, how are we going to get that bugger Scott on the bus? And you said, well, if you retire and you retire, he's got to go on the bus. What, up in the Opaho bus. One of the things that did actually, you rang me up one time. It was at a real critical time. You know, there were emails, there was we're all there. You rang me up and we talked for half an hour. And one of the things that you said to me was that words were important to you. And I actually, I thought about that. I know words are important to Michael too, because words haven't actually always been that important to me, and sometimes I say the wrong words or whatever. But I took that on board that, you're precise about the words. I was more focused on the outcomes, maybe a bit the feeling, whatever. But, there was a difference in terms of who we were, but it was great. You rang me up and we had a constructive conversation at a really difficult time, for half an hour, and I think we learned a little bit about where each of us was coming from. One thing I'm really looking forward to, I'm sorry about this, regardless of whether I get onto council or not onto council, is I'm really looking forward to less emails in my email inbox. I really, that's gonna, that's regard, even if I'm off, I'm gonna go, no emails today, shit.
I'll still have your email.
No, please. I'll go now. Like council, you can't hassle me like this. I genuinely thank you and Kevin for your work in the finance realm. It's not a realm that's particularly motivated me. And also, as Michael said, it never darkens the door of audit and risk, and that's ditto. So you took that on, got on you got an independent person, you looked at it, you came up with some good positive stuff. Somebody had to do it and it was genuinely appreciated. So thank you. I say it again, it hasn't been plain sailing for you, it hasn't been plain sailing for me, but I genuinely wish you well and I look forward to bumping into you on the street.
On a bus.
On a bus. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Gretchen.
One thing that hasn't been mentioned is people have mentioned finance and audit and risk and the words, and there have been a lot of words at times. I do have to acknowledge that. But with that, Hilary, in the emails, you are probably the hardest working councillor around the table. You, as previous CE said, the most contact she had with a councillor was you. You are the person that is always fronting up to issues and work extremely hard in the background as well as being kind in the background. So you have done a lot in the last 3 years, and we would like to thank you for the progress that you've taken us to in a lot of areas on account of that, and just really want you to enjoy your time now because you've given a lot to community over the years, and it's time for you to think about the things that really make your heart sing, and I know that'll be a lot of family and grandkids and also the environment, so enjoy your time.
Thank you. Kevin.
There's a fellow that's been a Labour Party member and ticket holder since 1949 said to me, son, you knew that she was standing down and you didn't get her to stand for bloody Mayor Dunedin. It's a Labour Party person saying this. We actually need someone with brains to run our town. So I think that's probably one of the biggest compliments person from the other end of the Labour spectrum could possibly get. And he was—
Thanks, Kevin's dad.
He was absolutely genuine with that. The other one was, my wife has said to me, how many times do you have to talk to Hilary Calvert? And I said, oh, quite a few times. She said, well, keep doing it because every time you come off, you're either scratching your head, but at least you're smiling. So whatever talks we had, and I didn't tell her all our talks were about, but they were obviously they had a good outcome with me anyway, Hilary. So whether you're leading me, guiding me, walking together, I've actually really enjoyed it. And as I said earlier, we're often coming from far different sides of a debate or a calculation in finance, but we've always, at the end of the day, got 1 and 1 to add up to 2, and I'm just tremendous. So thanks very much for your help. And one wee job in your retirement, there's a post in your yard at Turihua that you need to move just a wee bit, so CE's cars avoid it. So
That's my call.
Thanks, Hope.
Thank you, Michael Decker.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. I think you've done more work in 3 years than I did in 21. I really do. As somebody previous said, you've been an incredibly hard-working councillor, and I really admired you for that. There have been Saturday mornings when I've opened up my council email and seen just another 5 questions for Gavin and just another 3 questions for Nick, and I thought, oh my God. But that speaks for the thoroughness with which you approached being a councillor. And that's terrific. The thing that hasn't surprised me is what Gary said about you delivering a care package to his daughter in Newman University. Because by golly, you're a kind and generous and warm-hearted person. And I could relate, but it wouldn't top off the care package one. But coming up to my place when I was crook and having a chat and bringing some birthday cake when I wasn't here to get us and all of that stuff. So I really appreciated those. They weren't just gestures, they were genuine acts of kindness and friendship. And Hilary, I appreciated those a great deal. And I don't think I've said so before, and I feel bad about that. But well done. You've been a terrific councillor. And I'm glad I've sat beside you for 3 years. It's been good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, Hilary, I've known you for just as long as I've known Michael, only 4 months, so I can give you an equal amount of time. I'm not sure that you're allowed equal as long a response as what Michael gave us after 21 years, but in any case, I said earlier that it takes all sorts of people to hold an organisation to account. And so again, on behalf of staff and on behalf of the organisation, I'd like to thank you for your 3 years here, but also particularly for the last 4 months, because as almost everyone has said, you are the hardest working councillor. You're the person who's annoyed me more than anyone else and got into my ear, and you've been the most challenging. And actually those things are as important as the nice things I said about Michael in terms of being constructive. As important, you've been constructive, sometimes through your criticism, and caused me, and I'm sure our staff, as much reflection, if not more. So like everyone else, thank you for your time, for making a big difference to this organisation in a short amount of time. There will be a legacy. I really did enjoy your report, but also the one comment I haven't heard yet, I've heard that you've challenged us and that you've been extremely hardworking and that you've got a kind heart. But you've also got an excellent sense of humour, because I know that I've teased you quite a lot about being sort of far right occasionally. And I had Andrew going, don't go there, don't go there. You've actually been easy to tease, and I've really appreciated the 4 months. And I've been really disappointed, like everyone, I think, here, that you chose not to stand for the next term.
Thank you. All yours, I think.
I will keep it short, as you say, but only 3 years compared with Michael's proper long serving time. So I just want to say 2 things. The first is that I found the control that central government has exerted over us and the requirement that we do something and then 3 months later we do something else, or some incoherent lot of stuff that comes down from Wellington, one of the more challenging parts of this role. And I look back and remember my husband coming home one day, and he just resigned from being on a board of trustees. And people had said, why are you leaving and what are you going to do? And he said, well, what I thought I'd do is instead of coming down here, I would go home and pretend I was in charge of IBM, because it's a much bigger organisation. And since nothing makes any difference, then I may as well be doing it to IBM as coming down here and pretending to make a difference when nothing will change. So there is a feeling sometimes with things from central government that you're just pretending to do something, they've got you under their control all the time anyway. So perhaps I'll just in my, as it were, retirement, go off and pretend to be
the Queen.
Chair of IBM or something. Yeah. The second thing I wanted to say, well, actually three things. The second little thing that I hadn't been intending to say is nobody's ever accused me of being kind before, and I'm touched. And the third thing is I want to thank everybody around this table and the staff as well for their indulgence of me challenging things and having a viewpoint that sometimes is intended to persuade to my point of view or to challenge things or whatever, because democracy is the basis of all we do. We are here because the people have chosen the people around this table. And if everybody plays their role, then we will get the absolute wonderful effect that democracy can produce. And not only the people around this table, but the staff too, who have contributed to making this work. And so I just want to say thank you. And it isn't about whether people have agreed with or disagreed with me. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, you know. But when you look at around the world and see what is happening and what happens to the people who don't have democracy, and the casual somewhere between indifference and actually contempt some leaders hold for their people and things, what happens when you don't have democracy and you're not accountable to the people and to the people's representatives. It's just really important. So thank you to everybody who's helped me and the process of democracy. They haven't been doing it necessarily to help me at all, but I really appreciate whatever viewpoints and things that everybody around this table and all the staff I've had the pleasure to meet have contributed to trying to make the democracy we're part of work. Thank you. I'm going to go and live a safe and meaningful life with good physical and mental health. It's part of my well-being.
You ACC is a well-being officer.
Thank you.
Wow, that'll
yeah, he can hang up. Yeah, no problem.
So here is something which you better come to, yeah, but we finished the public part and then it just makes things a bit easier.
Those two, yep. So on the audit paper, it I'll just read them out because I think it's important that the council records its sincere thanks to Michael Dicker for the dedicated and conscientious service he has given to the Otago region as a member of the Otago region for the 21-year period from 2001 to 2022. I'll second that. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against.
Second motion.
Carried. Moving on to the second one, we record that the council records its sincere thanks to Councillor Hilary Calvert for the dedicated and conscientious service she has given to the Otago Regional Council as, the Otago region as a member of the Otago Regional Council for the 3-year period, 2019-2022. I'll move, second by Kevin. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Okay, but the recommendations from the committee, I sense someone will move by Kate. I'll second. That's moved by Kate, seconded by Richard. Recommendations of the Strategy and Planning Committee that the true and correct record. No discussion. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Gary will move the Regulatory Committee. I'll second. That the true and correct record. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Recommendations of Governance, Communications and Engagement Committee. Michael Decker, happy to move the true and correct record. Seconded by Michael Laws. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Moving on to item 10, Chairperson and Chief Executive's report. Take it as read. Just noting that Alexa's report from the local government conference and also the regional sector tour that was prior to the local government conference, and also just noting it hasn't been circulated, but the letter to go to Minister O'Connor has gone with regards to Lake Snow, and I think it was CC'd to two of the other ministers that have an interest in the topic. So that's gone, but I will circulate that the next day or so. What else was I going to add? Sorry, Kate. No, that's all.
The question I had earlier under the integrated catchment management, and I didn't think it was helpful to do at the end, but possibly under your chair's report, whether there'd be a recommendation to the incoming council to consider speeding up the integrated catchment management work in light of it doesn't have to have a reason, but because of those issues.
Can we just add it as a bullet point under recommendations to incoming council?
That was where I thought it was better than a standalone motion under the council paper. If you're, but are you happy to do that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So leave it in there and it's the other two.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Thank you.
So everyone's comfortable with that. Any other queries, questions?
You have to second your report.
Second it. So I'll send my report. Any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. What I should have done then, we've sort of covered it off a little bit, but I just wanted to acknowledge councillors around, everybody around the table for their contribution over the last 3 years. And I don't want to repeat what's already been said, but I think when you put yourself out as an elected member, it's not the sort of run-of-the-mill type of responsibility. You're a bit outside your comfort zone. You're a bit outside what you would call a normal 40-hour week or 9-to-5 job or whatever. What I'm trying to say is that there are a certain amount of people that stick their hand up, gain an election to a local authority, and I'm just grateful people do that, because Hillary's touched on the importance of democracy, and others have touched on the role that we play, but it's not everyone's cup of tea, and so it's just really a thanks to you all for doing that. I also want to over to Pim and his staff just to acknowledge all their efforts over the last 3 years. There have been challenges, but we've worked through the challenges over time. It's so important that relationship between governance and staff at whatever level, it needs to be strong. It needs to be trustworthy, and we need to respect one another. And it's really important that we continue whatever happens after the election to drive towards those aspirations, because I know from both sides that's what we want. So I'd like to think that we will keep working towards that. So to all your staff, Pim, thank you to them at the very highest level, to the very the other end, and we really appreciate what they've done. Yeah, so thank you. So that's done. Chief Executive's report. This is 10.2. Take it as read. Second by Carmen. Any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. For those in favour, sorry.
Point in the discussion. I like to point about there being good news stories as well. We need to communicate those more effectively. I also think we need to be more effective about communicating the not so good news stories. And we've really seen this with the bus problems. We're not communicating them well with people, which makes them really, really frustrated. And I think that's probably true for all our stories. So all of our stories need to be communicated. And I think one of the really key things for us in the next triennium, should we be elected, or those of us that are and those will be, is to start really thinking about that trust situation that we have. It's poor across the world and it's poor in New Zealand and it's getting worse, and we're going to do better if we can communicate just much more openly with our communities on all subjects.
Yeah, look, I think I did say that I thought we could do a much better job of communicating. So it wasn't just about good news stories. We have focused on getting more good news stories into the public arena, and I've been really well supported by particularly Jo Gaylor and her team under Richard in doing that. Andrew and I met with the editor and chief executive of the ODT recently, and I'm going to be meeting monthly with Hamish McLean now. That's been set up, and it'll just be an off-the-record conversation, just me and him. So look, I think some of this is around the way we communicate with our community, and I've said that quite a few times. We can do a much better job. So I accept what you're saying, Alexa, but equally, we've also had our fair share of negative reporting. I think we did suggest maybe to the editor that it was someone else's turn. We'd had our fair share over the recent time. But look, appreciate your comments. I just wanted also, Andrew, to thank you for your report, by the way, because I know you put a lot of work into it, and I've really appreciated your report and your reflection as chair. And I've certainly appreciated my working relationship with you in terms of that importance around building a more trusting relationship between governance and management, senior management. You've been really helpful to me and very supportive. And Alexa, I just wanted to also say how much I enjoyed going to LGNZ conference with you, and equally that you've written an excellent report. So it's not just Hillary that's done a great job today.
And she's got photos.
So thanks. That's all I really wanted to say.
Can I just jump on the usual report to introduce something else I just introduced before? I should have acknowledged Kevin and Michael as deputy chairs over the last 2.5 years. Thank you for your support, both of you. Been really appreciated, and you both operate quite differently, but I appreciated the support. Thank you. Sorry, Carmen, are we going back to CE? Sorry.
No, but it's all right. It's just
CE's report.
May I make a comment?
Go for it.
Look, I'm sorry, I was stepping out of the room. I'm not sure if anyone has said to both of you, but thank you as well, because we don't know on the 8th of October how our lives lie. But I'm sure this is the ideal forum to say thank you, setting the ship for you to coming in, to give us back a confidence again between ourselves and our staff here, our wonderful staff and the public. And you too, Andrew, thank you for guiding the ship on some very, very stormy days, and we've come up there with the anchor down, and someone has to do it. And thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks. So I'll put the motion for noting Pim's report. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. So that finishes the public part of the council meeting. So I'll move the resolution to exclude the public. Second by Kevin. I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. And what I suggest we have a